Since 2003, this is The Sports Source with your host, John Pennington.
The Sports Source is presented by Junk Be Gone, Pipe Wrench, and the Garza Law Firm.
The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into the Sports Source here in the Junk Be Gone studios. What a game yesterday by Chaz Lanier. What a clutch into the game by Zakai Ziegler. What a big win for Tennessee down at Texas A&M. We will break that down. We will get into the NCAA Tournament. We'll show you the latest projections. Where does Tennessee sit? We'll look at who they are competing with for a 1 seed. Can they still get there? We'll look at all those schedules of who you're battling. We'll also shift it on over. Nebraska canceled the series with Tennessee this week. It made Danny White mad. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about a whole lot of stuff. The SEC is looking at some potential big changes for the playoff for, well, I don't guess it's a playoff, but a play-in for the SEC. We'll explain that. Whole lot of stuff in today's show. Let's get into it. First segment of this show brought to you by the Garza Law Firm. Folks, when you need an attorney, there's nothing more important in the world than finding a good one with a long track record of success and a history and rapport with the judges and attorneys and prosecutors in the local legal system. That's why so many here in East Tennessee turn to Marcos Garza and the Garza Law Firm. They are the experts here. They have been for a long time, and they are part of this community. GarzaLaw.com to learn more. Check them out. We appreciate them being part of this show each and every week, the Garza Law Firm. All right, here's some other guys I appreciate being here. Not every week, but whenever you're here, I appreciate you being here. Jimmy Himes right there. Will West right there. Former D1 basketball player, former UT assistant coach Mark Pankratz right there. And Chuck Cavaleris right down there on the end. Thank you all for being here. Texas A&M won a lot of battles yesterday, but they lost the war. Texas A&M won right after we said last week, boy, you look at the numbers, the most important stat is points in the paint. A&M won points in the paint yesterday. A&M won second chance points. A&M had more fast break points. A&M had more offensive rebounds, more defensive rebounds, more assists. Tennessee was called for more fouls. Well, clearly, you know the outcome. Well, there was one stat that mattered more. Tennessee shot 48% from three, while Texas A&M shot 16.5. 13 made threes versus 5 for the Aggies. The Vols won the war. Mark Pankratz, top takeaways from yesterday's ball game.
Well, a great game like you started out the show with. The guys, everybody competed. The difference you look at, I mean, we could talk about Chaz making three-pointers, but I look at, Wade Taylor, potential SEC player of the year, look at his stat line, 0 for 9 from 3, and then you look at Zakai Ziegler down the stretch and what he did in that second half. In this team, it continues to be resilient. And you're down 9 points in the first half on the road against a top 10 team in the country, and we continue to battle back. Texas A&M, they looked at what they do best is offensive rebound, and they attack downhill. And our will of defensive ability to guard guys one-on-one showed itself last night. And then our ability to compete down low. Despite Igor being in foul trouble, despite Akbar having some foul trouble, we continue to show up. We'll talk about the offense, but again, that's a defensive win in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I tell you what, that was a Hall of Fame inbounds play at the end. Didn't you think so? The lineup with 3 across the lane made it look like it might be throwing it in to Akpara, or you're going to set a screen for Lanier. Instead, Zakai pops out. You punk Wade Taylor. He gets caught looking back. Zakai hits the 3. That's one of the best inbounds play under your own bucket I've ever seen.
It is because he made it. Because if he didn't make it, we're sitting here saying,
why did Zakai
do it?
Like after the other game, why did Zakai get the last shot?
The play was designed for Akbar to get the lob,
right.
get the tip, and they just didn't give him the good position. And, Zakai just continues to show up.
And
his
one
method.
last thing.
Good play.
When was the last time Tennessee goes on the road and hits 18 out of 20 free throws? And your only 2 misses were by really your best free throw shooter, Zakai. You shoot 90% on the road. I don't know how often that's happened.
Or shoot 50% from 3 with this bunch. So, Will and Jimmy, top takeaways.
It was three-point shooting to me, the big difference. You talked about all the battles that A&M won, but the difference was Tennessee made 24 more points on three-point shots. They made 13-5. A&M went into the game as the worst three-point shooting team in the SEC, and they were 5 of 30. Now, they also went in as the worst free throw shooting team, and they were 18 out of 20, so that didn't hold. But I just thought the difference was the three-point shooting, the ones that Tennessee made. That was a difference in the game. It overcame the fact that they lost the battle on the boards, that they lost the points in the paint, the other things. And a lot of that had to do with not just Lanier, but Zakai Ziegler hit a couple of threes, a big one we just talked about, and Gainey hit 2 threes and 2 free throws in the last 3:33. Those were big points for Tennessee.
I thought it was more than just make or miss, though, because I thought, I mean, yes, it's make or miss. You made shots, they missed shots. They're the worst shooting team in the SEC.
Which we showed last week, by the way, that one thing to look forward to the last 5 games for Tennessee is 4 of the teams you play shoot worse than you.
So that helped. But I also thought early on Tennessee, I thought they were flat. I thought they were a little apprehensive to take open shots, and maybe it's because you've shot so poorly, in the month of February and in January. I also thought that defensively you were really flat early on. And if you saw, A&M started out shooting pretty darn well. Tennessee was able to pick that up midway through the first half. I thought they closed out better once they kind of got a little time out under their belt. I thought that they did a much better job of the rotation whenever A&M would start coming forward. And I thought they started, when they did move the ball side to side, you had an open shot, they started taking it. Chaz started taking them instead of being apprehensive. And when you can make those shots, the problem is they don't always make those shots, and your guards shoot you out of games. But I do think that last night or yesterday they were hitting them, so why be apprehensive? And once they got going, they took over the lead, they didn't really look back.
I think this time you're like, we knew that they were going to drive the ball downhill. That's what Texas A&M does. But when you're not getting as much reps in practice this time of year, it's hard to duplicate how fast and tough those guys drive it. We did a good job defensively, really shrinking the gaps, guarding the paint, making them kick it out. They did make some early shots because of some good action that they had on the backside, where we had some mismatches defensively. We had, say, Igor guarding Taylor at times, and he can drive by him better than he can Meshack or Zakai. So give Texas A&M credit. I do think we made some adjustments. The big thing for Chaz is he's starting to get away from some of that screening action. Like you talk about Barnes all year has been saying he's been getting grabbed and held and can't get away from screens. He's starting to get a little bit more separation, and with that quick release, he doesn't need much to let it fly.
Well, let's continue right there. We got a graphic I want to put up if we can get to it about Zakai Ziegler and Chaz Lanier. Getting hot at the right time. Chaz Lanier over his last 4 games is averaging 20.5 points per game. That's 3 above his season average. And Zakai Ziegler, his last 6 games, up to 18.6 points per game. The last 6 games, that is more than 5 points above his season average.
And
Those
he's
two
now
are hot
shooting.
at the right time.
He's now shooting 37% from 3 in SEC play.
And he's doing it after not a very good, poor first half, right? I mean, he's had like back-to-back games, it seems like, where he didn't do a whole lot in the first half. And the announcers are kind of begging on him to be more aggressive. And he does that in the second half. And I think, a game or so ago, scored all 22 in the second half. And yesterday only had 3 at halftime and did a lot of that scoring.
Yep.
Another thing, too, and Barnes pointed this out, for Meshack to have some of the struggles he's had, and he's hit a big 3 in a recent game, he had 2 tip-ins that Barnes said he thought were the difference in the game, huge plays. One of them was a double tip. So, and then on the plus-minus that I always check, Gainey, Jimmy, was plus 15. Meshack was plus 12. So when they're on the court, Tennessee's outscoring their opponents, and that's just showing how valuable they are.
Well, the other part, and this goes to what Mark said about defense, the 2 best scorers for A&M were 1 out of 16 on threes.
Yeah.
So that certainly helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Let's put up the Chaz Lanier shot chart if we can, just from yesterday. Not sure if we have that ready or not, but anyway, just so you can see where he was making and missing from. Are you feeling more? Do you think he's getting more confidence? Because a few weeks ago, I think we would have questioned his confidence level. Do we think that's improving now, or is it just when your shots fell the last couple of weeks? We'll see.
I think it's just shots, Phil. At the end of the day, I do think that there seems to be a little more space for him, and they're moving. They're not trying to win those Kevin O'Neal 62-58 games anymore. They're trying to get up to 70, and I think that does allow for more space to be there.
I think you're putting about 10 points on the Kevin O'Neal
That's probably true. It's probably true. More console
52-48. Yeah.
But I think that helps. I think Chaz's problem is he needs to play in space. And it's been a struggle for him as they try to grind things out and play 1988 Gene Katie basketball.
And don't forget that left-handed driving dunk he had. To me, was like one of the plays of the year, too. I mean, that was great to see. He's not just making threes. He took it to the rim, and he's been doing that a little bit more the past few games.
I think it's confidence, though. I'll say that because Ziegler even said the other day that he was a guy that would pass up shots if he missed the first couple of shots. He said, unlike Dalton Connett, who would keep firing it away, Lanier would say, I'm off, I'm not going to shoot it. And I think Ziegler told him, he said, no, you got to keep doing that.
Shoot your way out.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think he's done that, and I think confidence has a lot to do with it right now.
I think this was also you saw the bench points. You talked about those guys being ready. You talk about Chaz's ability, it shows the value of rest, right? Like we didn't
Oh,
have a
yeah.
game
Great
early in the
point.
week,
Great point.
and so this is why we're going to talk about seeding later in the show. Rest is a big thing for this team, and you got to get that bye in the SEC tournament.
double
So
bye if you
double
grab
bye
it,
is
yeah.
huge for this basketball team because it shows when you got legs, when you're able to sit down and guard the way that they
Right.
guarded down the stretch, make big plays, make free throws. That a lot of that had to do, I think, with a midweek break.
Very good. Okay.